because you're going to need to get more lidocaine and you're going to need to reuse this needle. So of course, you're going to have to be very careful. Not all places have the safety needles. So when you go to take this needle, again, no matter which way you're going to take it, so get it, turn away, and you're going to come back here and lay it next to my sharps box. You don't have to take the syringe off. You could just leave it. We have enough flush syringes. If it is uncapped, you're going to stick it down into the styrofoam, or if it's not safety, okay? You could take it off, and so you wouldn't have your syringe. This takes extra time. Only I would do that if it wasn't uncapped, and then I would stick it down in there. Okay, and I would use my hemostats to take it off. Okay, you could throw that empty syringe over. Okay, next step is going to be my deeper lidocaine. Okay, with this one, I'm going to go in. Now this is where it's a little different. The doctor needs to aspirate a little bit. And I had a good question, well, if we filled the syringe up, how are we gonna aspirate? You're not gonna fill it completely to the hub where you can't pull back at all. I did say fill it, but I want you to fill it to about 10. Now this is a 12. You're still gonna have a couple cc's where they can still pull back. The reason they need to aspirate is they could be in the artery or the vein with that needle. And we don't want to just start injecting lidocaine into their bloodstream because it can cause arrhythmias and can cause problems, okay? So they're going to go in, they're going to pull back on this plunger a little, called aspirating. If they get no blood return, they're in the tissue. Then they can start injecting. And I'm going to be asking you these kinds of questions also while we're doing our practical. What do we need to do now that I put the needle in? You're going to tell me they need to aspirate. Why do they need to aspirate? We want to make sure we're not in a vessel. How would I know you're in a vessel? You're going to get blood return. If you don't get blood return, you're in the tissue. If you get blood return, you're in a vessel. What do you need to do? Pull it out, reposition, aspirate again. Make sure they're not in the tissue. Once they know they're not in the tissue, then they can administer the lidocaine. Okay? Okay? Next step is my access. Some doctors are gonna, maybe feel just a little bit. A lot of lidocaine can obscure the pulse a little bit. So if it wasn't a great pulse to start with, then they may have a little bit harder time feeling it. Also, the better doctor, I don't want to say the better doctors, the more conscious doctors are going to try to let that lidocaine work a little bit, like when you go to the dentist and they numb you up and then they leave the room for a little bit so that it works. Some of them don't do that and they just go straight and the patient still kind of feels stuff. Either way, they're going to have their percutaneous needle. This needle needs to be bevel up. So remember, the bevel is the hole, the open hole, right? So that's bevel down, that's bevel up. You can actually see the hole. Does anybody remember at what angle we need to go into the patient?
45?
30 to 45. So a 30 to 45 degree angle. So we don't want to go straight up and down. We don't want to go completely flat against their skin. About a 30 to 45 degree angle they're going to go in, okay? Once they hit the artery, blood should start spurting out, okay? At that point, then the doctor's going to reach down and get their wire and stick it in. As long as it goes smooth, we're good. If they feel any resistance, they're going to pull it back out, maybe readjust. We don't want to go through the vessel or into the intimal lining. They're going to feel resistance if that wire is trying to do that, okay? Everything's going smooth, then they're going to stop at that point. This is a good point where they could make their little nick in the skin if they're going to make the nick in the skin, okay? Make their little nick in the skin. It goes right where the needle's going in the skin. Again, it's just opening up that tissue tract just a little bit more. Now, there is another point. They could wait until they have the needle out and just have the wire in to make the nick. You might see some do that. This is when you don't stop and do the nick in the skin though. At this point, before we put our wire in, because blood is spurting out. You sit here and there's no need. Blood's just still spurting out. Every heartbeat, blood's gonna be spurting out. So once you put this wire in, it stops that blood. It closes that lumen up. Blood's not gonna be spurting out anymore, okay? The wire's going down into the artery. Make the nick in the skin here, or once we've removed the needle. The next step, we have to remove the needle. We got to keep the wire in place though. So the doctor, if it's a short wire, this is when they're not really going to need your help, okay? If it's a long wire, they're going to need your help, and we'll demonstrate that in a minute. So the doctor would just take this needle off, throw it down. You would get that, turn away from me, and go stick it in the sharps box. Now at this point, it may be that the doctor wipes the wire, and then, because it's right here, loads. If this is I'm hoping this is not this might not go. Yeah, it's gonna go, good. I was hoping it wasn't a radial one. Feeding the sheath over, going in, wire and dilator coming out. Now we have our access. It's gonna be very similar to the radial with maybe just a little tweak. If we use a micro puncture, we might actually have a smaller little tube that we put in first, put the wire in, remove that tube, and then put the sheath. So it just depends on whatever tools they're using for access. Okay, now, I'm going to demonstrate, before I demonstrate flushing, we'll go back and demonstrate. Go ahead and get that arterial needle back for me. We're going to use the long wire, good. Now, just say, this is a good place to do this, if the doctor had tried to get in, and then something happened, they weren't getting good access, they ended up pulling everything out, holding some pressure, you've already used this needle, or now we're going to access the vein. You need to flush that needle. So you'll get your flush. Make sure you're flushing, pointing away, just like she's doing. Good. Bring the needle in, away.
Oh, okay.
Yep, good. So that I don't accidentally hit, and you can lay it down. And I usually say, okay, coming in with the needle. And then the doctor can pick it up. Some people, if there's visible blood on the hub, you could do a little wipe as well with your wet 4x4. Okay? So we're gonna demonstrate, go ahead and grab the long wire, and I'm just gonna throw the cheater on because they do come with the cheater and it'll be easier for right now. So you would just have had it set up like this instead, right? Getting access, hub up, 30 to 45 degree angle, blood spurting, feed my wire in, make my nick, remove my sheath. They will apply a little pressure there too. Remove my needle, because the needle is a larger bore than the wire, and so there could be a little bleeding at the artery site, at the hole in the artery. That's called the arteriotomy. And so they probably will apply a little bit of pressure there. They're gonna pull the needle down here, and then this is where you're going to finish for them. So you wanna make sure that you just don't get close to the sharp part. Pull your needle off. Now, if they're, like one of these doctors don't wanna wait, you can lay your needle down over there away from you. Go ahead and wipe. Come all the way here, because there's blood on that wire, wipe. And then you're gonna load the sheath on. Hold some tension on that wire, meaning like a tightrope, but don't pull. We're gonna go in. And then some doctors will just leave the wire in the patient, and then we take the dilator off, wipe the wire again, because there's blood. Lay the wire down. I would throw a 4x4 or something to secure, because that's your problem now. That's your responsibility to make sure it doesn't go off the side of the table. And if the doctor's up here doing something, and it flips, guess whose fault it was? Not the doctor's. It's yours because you're supposed to be in control. And at this point, you might have turned, and you probably should be getting that sharp out of here. So put it, yep, in your styrofoam, perfect. Okay? Now, some doctors will actually have you go ahead and take the long wire out along with the dilator. We'll wipe it and wrap it in a loop, which I'm going to teach you that a little bit later. You would go ahead and get rid of this, onto your back tray. I would probably even throw that in the garbage. If I had time and I had a garbage close enough, you'll just toss it, get your blade, put it back. And even anything like that, put that in your garbage bowl, okay? And now it would be time to load the catheters on, which we'll go into that next week.
Flush, did you flush?
I did not flush, thank you. Oh, and that sheath was not right, so it would have been bleeding all over me. So now, I am going to demonstrate flushing. I'm gonna go ahead and take this wire out real quick. The doctor is probably the one that's going to flush it. And this is how we wipe and wind. Okay. And then I might just tuck it under there. But there may be a time that you actually have to flush the sheath. So you need to understand about flushing the sheath, okay? Tia, will you come up and just hold my cup in place for me? So that we can actually do fluid to fluid. I have to have her hold.
I'm okay on this side.
Just because it's this demonstration. She's not really here. This is in the artery. Forget she's here. All right, so when you're gonna flush, remember that's why we need some room here. Because every time we connect, there can be some residual air. Okay, a lot of docs are gonna go ahead and screw it on and then go ahead and flush a little out that side port. You're gonna open the stopcock just like you were gonna flush it, but instead of going forward, you're gonna draw back. Okay, we're gonna have the butt of the syringe up because air's gonna rise. So we're gonna come up, you saw that bubble? We should be getting blood return as well. I need to use some of my food coloring. I have some actual red food coloring. Is it sucking? I'm getting a lot of air. Oh, you know why? I don't think I really flushed this. I'm not sure. Anyway, you really shouldn't be getting that much air. Be more blood return, but you may have a little bit of air. And then you would flush forward, back into the patient to clear the line, but stop before that bubble would be going in. Okay, then the doctor's just gonna throw that syringe down there. You're gonna go put put that, squirt that into the waist, get a little bit of flush, just pull back, squirt that into the waist, you're cleaning that syringe. Now get him 6 more cc's of flush and bring that flush syringe back over here for him. Okay? Then we would be loading the catheter. Couple different ways, but we'll get into that next week.